The Legend of Zelda series has always been a special series in my heart. It may sound silly to some, but this series has been really influential to my growth, as Zelda was a big proponent into how I developed problem-solving skills. My first experience with The Legend of Zelda was with two games, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the N64, and The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening for the Game Boy. Ocarina of Time was great, but Link's Awakening was more simple for my younger self, and I loved Link's Awakening a lot, and here lately, I've really been thinking about just how much I love it and what it really means to me. So today, let's look back and realize why Link's Awakening is what dreams are made of. Link's Awakening was the sequel to A Link to the Past before the Game Boy. Now, Link's Awakening in itself is a technical marvel. Being able to fit a Zelda game on the Game Boy is a really big deal considering how big Link's Awakening is. And it is very, very similar to Link's Awakening, which even for the Super Nintendo was a really big game. Obviously, there were limitations to the game, such as item placement, how items had to constantly be swapped out, but being able to fit a Link to the Past-esque game on the Game Boy was crazy impressive. Link's Awakening would later get a re-release in the form of Link's Awakening DS. This, for a while, was the best version of this game to play, as it did have some quality of life fixes and an added color, and it was available on, the Game Boy Color. I believe it actually was available on the Game Boy. You can get on the 3DS, and then you have all the backwards compatible systems you can play it on, so you always had a chance to play Link's Awakening growing up. Years later, while the 3DS was still the hot portable system out, there were several rumors of a Link's Awakening remake in a style similar of A Link Between Worlds. I was beyond excited because I loved Link's Awakening and I loved A Link Between Worlds, so I was pumped. Years went by with nothing of note but just rumors until February 13th of 2019.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for! That's what it's all about!
Link's Awakening was finally getting a remake on the Nintendo Switch, and man did it look fancy. We got the cool animated intro, and the art style was very similar to a diorama. I've also seen a lot of people who hate this art style, but personally, I love it. It was really cute, and it looked fun, and I couldn't wait to play it. The game would come out that September. While admittedly overpriced, I still loved Link's Awakening a lot. I loved the graphics, the gameplay, the silliness of the game, and the soundtrack. I remembered why I loved Link's Awakening so much. It's such a different Zelda game, and I'd argue it tells one of the best stories in the entire series. Link's Awakening begins with Link sailing out in the middle of the storm. He's struggling quite a bit until a huge bolt of lightning strikes his raft. We're taken to an island where a girl stumbles upon Link as we get a decent look at the island with a giant egg sitting on a mountain. Link will wake up in similar fashion as to how he did in A Link to the Past, minus the whole Zelda is your blank thing. I still don't really get what that's supposed to be. We're told that we're on the island of Caholin. We meet the girl who rescued us, Marin, who is adorable, by the way, and her father Tarin, who looks like the long-lost brother to Mario and Luigi. We head out on the beach in order to find our sword, and after finding our sword, we head into the mysterious forest. Here we meet an owl who lets us know that the island is quite strange and filled with monsters due to the windfish, the guardian of Caholin Island, being asleep. The owl will task Link to wake up that windfish in order to save the island. We'll be going through 8 main dungeons in order to collect the 8 instruments necessary to wake the windfish. And that is the basic premise of Link's Awakening. And while it is quite simple, it does have a lot of interesting themes that I think makes this game very, very unique. Before I jump into that, however, I do want to talk about Link's Awakening's gameplay for a little bit. Now, Link's Awakening plays like any other 2D Zelda game from the time, in particular A Link to the Past. You use your sword with the B button, use your shield with the right shoulder button, and more. Like every other Zelda game, you have items that you can put onto other buttons. So, Link's Awakening has an item known as the Rox Feather. With this item, you can either use the X or Y button on the Nintendo Switch version to jump. You'll use this a lot, and often I have this equipped for the entire game because I love jumping. Now, one thing about the original Link's Awakening that I always hated was how you selected items. See, in the original Game Boy game, you were very limited with your item slots, and often moving between the item screen back and forth ate up a lot of time. Thankfully, with the remake, this is fixed, but man, it definitely added a lot of time to the dungeons in the original one, because you switch items a lot in Link's Awakening. Whether it be on the main hub of the game on Caholin or in the dungeons, a lot of your time will be spent switching items out back and forth. A lot of items in Link's Awakening are really fun though, so in a way, I do think it is kind of worth it. As I mentioned before, I love the Rox Feather. Being able to jump really makes this game a lot of fun if you know what you're doing. Due to this game still following a bit of a grid format, your movement is limited, but you can still cheese quite a few moments with the Rox Feather in order to get an item early. This is even easier once you get the Pegasus Boots. The Pegasus Boots allow Link to do a quick dash, pulling his sword forward, taking out any enemies in his path. Now, you will be stopping your tracks if you're hit by an enemy or a wall, but man, once you unlock these boots, it's really hard to go back to just walking everywhere. I love going back to Link's Awakening, but man, it's really hard getting used to not having the Pegasus Boots because it takes a bit to get used to not be able to go that fast. And that's not just this game, but like Link to the Past, Link Between Worlds have that issue as well, I think. But it's weird going back, you know. It took me a bit to get used to and actually need the footage for this. Favorite Zelda items such as the hook shot, mirror shield, and others do return. You will have to buy items such as the bow and arrow and the shovel, but you rack up a ton of money in this game if you explore quite a bit, and exploring in Link's Awakening is quite fun, so this is really never an issue for me personally, because there's so many things you can do to get money. There are different spots on Caholin Island that you can just go mow grass with your sword and get tons and tons of rupees, and there's hidden rupees all over Caholin. You're really never gonna go without money. And the thing is, you're rewarded a lot for exploring Caholin Island. You can find the usual heart pieces in order to get more health, but you can also gather these seashells. With the shells, you can go to a house located on Caholin Island in order to gain new items, and once you gain all of them, you can get an extra attack, and just other items in general. Now, I never really cared about doing this much in the DX remake versions because there's an extra dungeon known as the Color Dungeon, and once you complete the Color Dungeon, you have the choice between two tunics. The red tunic that grants you extra power, or the blue tunic that grants you extra defense. Everyone and their grandmother chooses the red tunic, but I always go with old blue because it's my favorite color and I like the extra defense. Now, you don't have to do this because in the later part of the game, you can get an item that will give you extra defense, but I just like doing this because it's extra defense. The thing is, though, Link's Awakening isn't hard and you'll rarely die in this game because I find Link already hits hard enough and the bosses in this game are such damage sponges that you're easy to hit. And, like, even if you choose the blue tunic, you're probably not gonna die anyway. So, take for example the first boss of the game, Moldorm, who looks like a hamburger to me. He's the first boss of the first dungeon, Tail Cave, and he's a repeat boss from Link to the Past. You simply hit the big pimple on his tail to beat him. A few hits and he's done. This is the hardest boss in the game, minus the final boss in my opinion. The rest of Link's Awakening is really simple. Another example would be the 4th dungeon's boss, the Anglerfish, and this guy's pathetically easy, and I'd argue the easiest boss in the entire series. You literally can just sit above him and swipe down at him in order to beat him. It's honestly really fun, I think, timing yourself on how fast you can beat this guy, because I've seen people who can do it in like 10 seconds. It is insane how easy he is. Speaking about dungeons, though, I want to get back to the story of Link's Awakening for a bit, because while the main plot is pretty simple, you know, you're going to the 8 dungeons, you beat the boss, you collect the instrument in order to, you know, reach the end and wake up the Windfish, there are a lot of neat things that you can do in between the dungeons, and I think the characters are really interesting. So, the one that you're probably going to think of the most when you play Link's Awakening is Marin, how you pronounce it, I call her Marin. And she's the girl who rescues Link. She's a spunky girl who isn't afraid of adventure, is good at singing, and loves animals. I really like Marin. It's never outright said, but hinted quite a bit, especially at certain points, that Marin has a crush on Link, and this actually ends up having one of the most cutest scenes in any Nintendo game, I feel, because there's a point in the game where you need Marin to help you wake up a sleeping animal, so you go to the beach to find Marin, and here Marin is sitting on a log looking out onto the beach from how she wants to be, basically free, and, you know, kind of like a bird that can just fly away high in the sky, and just have lots of freedom. She's not Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan, I promise. Which I really like, and I admire that part of her character a lot, and she then kind of hints Link that she likes him, and a lot about this scene is great. The music, the scenery, and the dialogue. You know, Zelda isn't known for having a super strong narrative, but when games like this and Majora's Mask have great characters, they have really, really good, great characters. Throughout the game, you'll visit interesting areas like the Animal Village, Telltale Heights, and more, and I really like the map of this game a lot. It's really fun to explore and find whatever secrets are lying around. You'll be doing this quite a bit with this game's most well-known side quest, the trading side quest. So, where do I begin with this? Well, in Mabe Village, there's a crane game that you can do. Here, you want to try and get the Yoshi doll. You'll then take the Yoshi doll and give it to Papa and Mamasha, I can say pronounce the names, for the ribbon. Then go to Madame Meow's house and trade the ribbon for dog food. See, you're basically gaining items and trading them for other items. If you begin this quest at the beginning of the game, it's pretty simple to do. You just have to explore and meet the people who want said item and trade with them. I know a lot of people who hate this quest, but it's honestly not hard at all. You just talk to the NPCs to trade the items, and it's very much worth it towards the end. I mean, you gotta do this. Towards the end, you'll eventually get a mermaid who has lost her necklace. Talk to the nearby fisherman under the bridge in order to get the necklace back. Give it to the mermaid, she'll give you one of her scales. You then place the mermaid scale onto the mermaid statue, and you can access the magnifying lens. Now, you have to have this for the end of the game, so you need to do this. Once you have the magnifying lens, however, you can go get a boomerang near the beach where Link washed ashore. The boomerang in this game is OP as hell, because if you use it against certain enemies, you can get fairies from them. You essentially have free reign to spam this and get extra fairies easily, and it's really easy to get bottles in this game. You can get your first bottle at the beginning of the game by doing a fishing game that's really easy, and you have a free bottle with an extra fairy right there. The thing about fairies, though, in this game is it does follow the old Zelda style where you have to use the fairy before you die. If you die and you have a fairy, you're not going to get revived, so you got to use it if you're on that last heart, you know. So that is something that will, I think, take a more modern day Zelda fan to get used to if you played the 3D games more, but it's still there if you want to use that. But yes, the trading quest is long, but if you start at the beginning of the game, it's really not an issue at all. Okay, side quests aside, back to the actual story I want to dive into. So, throughout being the dungeons, you'll get several cryptic messages from the boss about there being more to Caholin Island than meets the eye. Once you have finished the 5th dungeon, you're tasked with going to the ancient ruins of Caholin Island. Here, Link finds a very interesting mural. Now, I'm a big fan of murals. I think they're really neat. Just ask my senior quote. This mural has the tail of the windfish. So yeah, this whole journey's been a dream of the windfish. Now, I love this twist. Everything in this game is fake. This is all a dream. The video you're watching is a dream. Reality is just a simulation. No, Link is actually sinking into the sea, and if he doesn't wake up, the windfish, and in turn himself, he'll end up drowning and dying. However, once the windfish wakes up, everything and everyone on Caholin Island will disappear in the dream. They're not real people. And that's a cool twist. I do know that when they were making this game, I think a lot of this game was inspired by the show Twin Peaks, which I never watched Twin Peaks. I know about it, but I've never really watched it. And I know, you know, a lot of people make a big deal about Majora's Mask being the darkest Zelda game, and while I do agree that it is, I do find the overall thing about Caholin Island disappearing until, you know, once the windfish wakes up to be incredibly sad. Again, I love the cast of Link's Awakening. I find them all quite charming and fun to talk to, so knowing that they'll disappear forever once we achieve our goal is very depressing and heartbreaking, and every time I play this game and I get to that part, I'm like, Jesus, dude, that's really fucked up. The journey must continue on, though. The windfish has to wake up. The next dungeon is the Face Shrine, and man, I love this dungeon a lot. It not only has a really good theme, but has a lot of cool rooms in it. There are rooms where the tiles on the floor rise up and shoot at Link. There's a, you know, this is really easy to dodge, because if you just get in a corner and throw your shield up, they'll just hit the shield and you won't get any damage. You also have rooms where you gotta throw chest pieces on particular spots of the floor to land on a space to access the next floor. And the boss of this dungeon is really cool, because he's just a face in the floor. I like this boss, because all I do is I just sit a bomb down on his face and blow him up. I actually don't know how you're supposed to beat him without just using the bombs, but, you know, it's neat. He's a face in the floor. It's kind of creative. The dungeon that I really hate in this game, though, is Eagle Tower. God, this place is a nightmare. Pun not intended there, because this place sucks. See, the annoying thing about Eagle Tower for me is that it's such a chore getting there, and there's a lot of prep work in order to do to even get to the thing. So Link in this game can get 3 ocarina songs, one from Baron, one from a weird fish, and one from a character who's basically Warp from Super Mario Bros. 2. And this is genius because Mario 2 is set in a dream. Love that. So you need to get this song from Not Wart to revive a chicken. Yes, this game is weird. You then need the chicken to help you go through the cave leading up to Eagle Tower to get the key to the tower. Then you go up to the tower. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you play the game, this part drags a lot. And that is something I do think Link's Awakening does suffer from, is there are a lot of parts where you have to go get a key to this, dungeon, and the pacing is a little weird at times. I get why they did this, it's because it's a Game Boy game probably, they wanted to make it last longer, but it drags at times, and it gets annoying. And the annoying thing about Eagle Tower for me specifically is the layout. You're basically grabbing this big iron ball, taking it to different areas of the temple, and throwing it at pillars. Now, the thing is that it's annoying about this is this ball can get stuck at certain points, it can fall down a hole, and then you have to go back to the room where the ball's at, do another puzzle to get the ball out, and you do this every time, by the way. It gets old, and it gets old very fast. Once you break all the 4 pillars, a floor of the temple will collapse, and you can actually access the top portion of the tower. I love this concept a lot, but it's really annoying finding out where you need to go and take the ball to the other spots without falling into a pit, or yourself falling on the pit, and then you gotta make the journey all the way back up and do the process again. It's not a particularly hard dungeon, it's just one that I always struggle at, and it's the dungeon that I know I have to use a guide for every single time. Speaking of guides, I do find Link's Awakening does have a bit of a Zelda 1 problem where you're just expected to know where to go at times. On your first playthrough, this is somewhat annoying, honestly. On repeat playthroughs, it's not really an issue, and I actually think Link's Awakening is better on the repeat playthrough than the first playthrough. Thankfully, you do have phone booths that you can go to in order to get a hint as to where you need to go. I've played this game so many times now that I don't really need it, but it's useful for those playing the game for the first time. For an example, I guess, to help prove my point here, the random ghost that appears behind you once you complete a dungeon, this ghost will tell you to take him home, but you likely don't know what to do, so you're going to be kind of confused on your first playthrough. I don't think this is as bad as Zelda 1, but it is a criticism that I do understand a lot of people have for this game. Link's Awakening does have a lot of fun and unique places to explore, though. There are parts of the game where Link will be on a 2D plane fighting enemies, doing platforming, and more. They're short but fun, and you're likely to encounter some really unique enemies in these portions, such as Goombas and Piranha Plants. Yeah, that's right, there are Mario enemies in this game. Also evil Kirbys, which I like a lot because it's Kirby's Dreamland. You're in a dream, it's awesome! See, this is something I do kind of miss Nintendo games doing a lot. See, having small stuff from other IPs come over is really cool because at the time, Smash Brothers wasn't a thing, so the closest thing to this was Mario, Yoshi, and Sonic Shoes showing up in Donkey Kong Country 2. It's neat, and I really love seeing this stuff in the game. It makes even more sense with this all being a dream. It's forced to death by people, but Link's Awakening is a weird game. You get a song from Not Ort, which allows you to bring a chicken back to life. You have a Chain Chomp companion for a short time that helps you to the second dungeon by eating giant flowers. There's Christine, a goat from Animal Village that is sending love letters to Mr. Right from SimCity. She's actually catfishing Mr. Right, but in a turn of events, the picture is actually a Princess Peach. Speaking of princesses, there's no Zelda in this game. She never shows up, there's never a flashback or anything. She may have one reference or two, but this is Link's adventure. The Legend of Marin just doesn't roll off the tongue. There is no Hyrule. This is a Zelda game that feels different, and I really like that a lot. Link's Awakening is certainly interesting, and has a lot of charm if you can't tell. The final dungeon, Turtle Rock, is an interesting one as well. So you actually fight the entrance to this dungeon. You use the Song of Revival to bring the entrance back to life, and then you fight it. I think that's neat. I liked how in Kingdom Hearts 1 you fought the Cave of Wonders, and this is kind of similar in a way. It's really cool. Turtle Rock is an alright dungeon. You get the magic wand here, and I don't know, I find this item just kind of weird. You really only use it for a small part of the dungeon by beating the boss, which is just a big fireball, but it's just kind of there. You don't really use it after this dungeon. You barely use it in this dungeon, and it's just, it's kind of a shame because, like, this is kind of a neat weapon in other games. They definitely combine the fire and ice rods together just to make the magic wand, but it's there, it's an item. Once you have collected the 8 instruments, you can go and finish the game, but first off, while I have spun with the Switch version a lot, I do have a few issues with this version. First, this is a Game Boy game, and you're paying quite a bit for it. $40 is the most I would pay for this. I love this game, but $60 is really pushing it when it came out. Another thing that I think the original game had that I really liked was the photo mode. Basically, at certain points in the game, you can take a photo with the characters. I thought this was really neat, but it's not in the remake, which is odd to me, because photo modes are becoming quite more common in games, such as, like Spider-Man PS4, Ghost of Tsushima, and even tying it back into Zelda, the HD version of Wind Waker. But not in this game, which I thought was a really odd thing to remove. The HD version of this game is the best way to experience this game nowadays, but it does suffer from some frame rate issues. It does try to go for a constant 60 FPS at times, but really it struggles a lot, and I don't mind 30 frames per second for a game like this. If it was more fast-paced, of course, like a Hotline Miami, I guess, for example, it needs to be a constant 60 FPS, but it's just odd to me how much it does struggle at times. Mainly on the main map of this game, it does it, but it's a critique that needs to be brought up. So, another addition to the HD version of this game is the Dompe's Dungeon Maker thing. And Dompe is just the gravedigger. He's in a bunch of other, Zelda games. I don't really enjoy this part of the game because I think originally this was going to be something like a bit of a test Nintendo was doing in order to make a Zelda Dungeon Maker game akin to like a Mario Maker. And I give them props for the idea, but this proved to me that I don't want a Zelda Maker because how you do it in this game is kind of weird. They have to be set up a certain way, certain like dungeon entrances got to lead to another room, and you can do some really cool stuff here, but you're limited with only Link's Awakening dungeons. And if you had more like a Link to the Past, maybe it would be better, or Zelda 1, even though the game sucks. It could work, but I don't think it works in this game. And you do have to do this if you want to 100% Link's Awakening, get all the heart pieces and stuff, because there are actually added heart pieces in this game. You have to do this, and I don't think it's worth it. It's the main reason why I haven't 100% of the remake of this game yet, because I think this part of the game sucks. It has potential, but putting the pieces together to make a dungeon is just a bit of a hassle. Once you get it together, it's fun. You're more dungeons you make, even though it's rooms you've done before. It's really, it's a neat concept, but like the execution just sucks, and I don't enjoy it that much. One thing that Link's Awakening doesn't suffer from, though, is a poor soundtrack. I honestly couldn't think of a better segue here, so the script will have to suffer. The soundtrack of Link's Awakening is great, and it's a super big shame that it doesn't get brought back or referenced more, because that's one of my favorite songs in the series, in the form of the Ballad of the Windfish.
Sleepers wake, dreams will fade, although we cling fast. Was it real, what we saw? I believe, lost in dreams, we sleep on, tossing and turning. Stay with me.
Now, Link's Awakening doesn't have my favorite Zelda OST, but it's still really good, and I think I've covered quite a bit here. I likely am missing something, but let's wrap up this bad dream, shall we? Once you've collected the 8 instruments and done whatever quest you like, you will need to go to the Caholin library. Here you will find a black book. This book will give you directions in the Windfish egg, which you won't understand till you get there. Before you get there, though, I always recommend talking to Marin one last time. She'll tell you how she made a wish to the Windfish, but won't tell us what that wish was yet. Go up to the Windfish and play the Ballad of the Windfish along with the 8 instruments. The egg will shake and eventually crack, revealing a giant hole. Now, this cutscene's really simple, but it's really cool. I love playing the Ballad of the Windfish with the egg cracking and all of the 8 instruments playing, and this version in particular is my favorite version in the entire game and series. The owl will let us know that it's time to go inside of the Windfish's egg and save the creature from the nightmare that is haunting not just it, but Caholin Island as well. The egg of the Windfish isn't really a dungeon, it's more just following the directions you got from the book in the library in order to reach the final boss. I always just take a picture of the directions on my phone to make it easier. You can write them down, whatever works for you. Once you reach the final boss, the boss will let you know that it wants the Windfish to sleep endlessly so they can rule this island. Without the Windfish being awake, this island can still live. However, Link appeared and those plans went to ruin. Obviously, this is the bad guy of this game, but technically he is right. Without the Windfish waking up, the island can still be around. However, the boss wants to use it for negative purposes, so he has to go down. Let's rumble, baby! So, this is Nightmare, and Nightmare has 4 phases. A ball form where it'll try falling on you, so just wait for it to hit the ground, then slash it a couple times. The second phase is really similar to the Aghanim fight from Link to the Past. Nightmare will throw energy balls at you, and you'll play a fun game of back and forth, or tennis, whatever with it. And it'll throw energy blasts at you that can actually hurt you, even if you have your shield up, so be really careful to avoid these. The third form is Moldorm for some reason. If you have the boomerang here in this phase, it's an absolute joke, because the boomerang will just hit the pimple on the tail 2 times, once on the initial throw, and when the boomerang returns, you'll get an extra hit, a really neat trick I learned in this playthrough. The fourth form resembles Ganon, and Nightmare Ganon has a trident that he will throw at you, and this really is really hard for me to avoid. I don't know the actual way you're supposed to, so normally I'll just Pegasus Boot dash my way into him in order to beat him. This is the most difficult phase of the fight, but it's still not particularly hard. A few slashes in, and the Nightmare will transition into its final form, which is an eyeball 2 arms. That's pathetically easy. All you literally do here is jump over his arms and shoot arrows into the eye. There's a joke to be made here about Nintendo being obsessed with bosses that are just a big eye, and you kill it by shooting it in the eye, but I'm not gonna make it. A few arrow shots in the eye, and eventually Nightmare will be dreaming that it was somewhere else, as it has finally been defeated. Before it blows up, it does give us another reminder that this island will disappear if the Windfish wakes up. And oddly enough, I do feel a bit bad for the Nightmare. Yes, it is a bad creature causing chaos among the island, but how it speaks also makes it sound like it is an inhabitant of Caholin. It wants to live and, well, not disappear. Stuff like this is why Link's Awakening really hits me. So if you take something like Majora's Mask, it's like the people of Clocktown know they're going to die once the moon falls. Link's Awakening is different. The residents of Caholin don't know that they're going to disappear, yet they still live really happily, and knowing that they're going to disappear to no fault of their own, and that they're basically, their life isn't real, is really sad. And this is why I find this thing with Marn talking about wanting to fly away so sad. She wants to be free and just experience life, and she can't because she's a dream, and it's really sad. With the nightmare defeated, a staircase appears with the owl telling us to run up it in order to meet the windfish. And the small scene with Link walking up the staircase into space until he reaches the platform in the sky is a small but super cool scene that I think is actually better in the remake, and I love the little jingle that plays along with it. The owl then appears and reveals us that all along he has actually been the guardian of Caholin and is a part of the windfish. And a common misconception I see here is that the owl is the windfish, and technically he is and he isn't. He's just a part of the windfish that's here to, seek help and guard the island. And I always was confused about that as a kid, and I had to have it explained to me, and I've met people now who don't know that, and I always have to explain to them, and it's an interesting little thing. The owl disappears as the windfish awakens, and it's more of a whale with wings rather than a fish, but who am I to question Nintendo on their animal visions? I don't know. And the windfish informs us that it has a dream of an island full of people, animals, etc., but the nightmare took over, and once it awakens, everything shall disappear. Only those who awake will have memories of this world, which is really depressing. Link plays the 8 instruments in order to wake up the windfish. As the song plays, we see several scenes of the residents of Caholin living their lives as the light embraces them, and the island of Caholin as a whole fades away. Link awakens on his raft to the sound of Marin singing the Ballad of the Windfish, with the windfish flying overhead as our hero has a big smile. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening is one of my first video games, and it's still one of my favorites. It definitely has issues, and I do think some of the pacing can be a bit weird. Some dungeons require keys that you have to have in order to access them, and I do think it does affect the pacing at times, because you're going back and forth on parts of the island, finding this, finding that. It gets a little old at times. There are issues where the game just assumes you know what to do, and this isn't much of an issue with, the earlier playthroughs, but when your first playthrough, it is an issue. It's something I criticize Zelda 1 for a lot, and it is here, and it's something you need to know about. However, even though this game has issues, I think it's still really good. The dungeons are fun, the characters are fun, the music is great, the visuals for the original game, especially the remake, are fantastic. I absolutely adore the diorama look that this game goes for. It's insanely cute and charming. Is Link's Awakening the best Zelda? No, it's not even the best handheld Zelda game. That honor goes to Link Between Worlds. However, it's still really solid and really fun to play. I often would record this game on the weekends, and while at work during the week, I really look forward to coming back home and playing this game, because I love Link's Awakening. It's one of my favorite Zeldas for a reason. I love this game, and I've wanted to cover this game on the channel since I started making YouTube videos. It's so precious to me in a lot of ways, and it delivers a strong message of memories may be gone, but people never die as long as you do remember them. I love that message a lot, and it's something that Link's Awakening taught me as a kid, and it's something I still hold true to myself today. I love this game a lot, and it's been a lot of fun remembering The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Thank you all for watching, and have some sweet dreams.